morning. It is Tuesday, January 6, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, launching his election campaign in a fiery speech, Benjamin Netanyahu claims he is the only leader who can withstand international pressure on Israel. 5 months after Operation Protective Edge, Israel removes troops from communities surrounding the Gaza Strip, leaving behind concerned residents. And later on the show, something lighter, or maybe not, the royal sex scandal that's dominating the British headlines. Good morning, I'm Yael Levi. We begin with the upcoming Israeli elections. Benjamin Netanyahu's ruling Likud party launched its election campaign yesterday with the message that only Netanyahu is capable of withstanding the pressure placed on Israel by the world. Determined to keep these elections the Bibi elections, the Likud went after all potential rivals for the top job, dismissing them as too weak to stand up to the world. Let's have a listen to what Netanyahu had to say.
זוהי הבחירה האמיתית ב-17 במרץ.
This is the real choice on March 17th. Likud under my leadership, or the left, led by Tzipi Livni and Bougie Herzog.
אני רק מבקש לשאול אתכם. הם אלה
I'd only like to ask you, are they the ones who will safeguard the citizens of Israel?
הם יעמדו מול החמאס, מול חיזבאללה.
They will stand up to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to Iran. I'll tell you one thing, they will not be up to the pressure. And there are many international pressures. They will not stand up to these pressures for even one moment. They want to submit. They only want to withdraw, to concede. And this has been the way of the left for 20 years already.
Netanyahu, who has served as Israel's prime minister for an accumulated 8 years, also expressed his desire to pass a comprehensive elections reform bill that will make it extremely difficult to dismantle the government. He said he wanted to pass the bill within the first 100 days in office after the next elections. We're joined in studio by our one and only I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev. Good morning to you, Tal.
Good morning, Yael.
Welcome back. And Haaretz senior military analyst Amir Oren. Good morning to you,
Morning,
Amir.
Yael.
And on the phone, we will be speaking shortly with Likud Minister Dani Danon. Before we begin, though, our discussion, let's see some more of what Benjamin Netanyahu had to say yesterday, specifically moving his agenda, his platform towards security, one of the main points in his speech. Let's have a listen.
I say with sorrow that the left is detached from reality, and we are connected to reality. In the reality of the Middle East, as it is, not as it is in the minds, the aspirations, and the imagination of the left, as it actually is, Islamist fundamentalism is flooding every corner. Any territory that we relinquish is taken over by Iran-supported terror groups and becomes a staging ground for attacks on Israel.
Joined on the phone by former Minister Dani Danon. Mr. Danon, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. First of all, quite an event yesterday. Likud launches his campaign. What is the main agenda? It's security?
The main agenda that the public need to decide whether we will endorse a left-wing government or a right-wing government. This is the basic message of the campaign. We cannot have the luxury of choosing a third party. It either will be the Likud party or the Labour Party.
Either the Likud or the Labour Party, but when it comes to Mr. Netanyahu's message yesterday, he spared nothing back, but he also pinpointed the international community. I'm asking you, as part of the Likud, when the Prime Minister points a finger at the international community and says that everybody has to be strong against them, doesn't that also move along the isolation of Israel?
Well, when we look at what's happening in the region today, we understand that with all due respect to our friends and allies around the world, we have to first deal with our enemies in the region, looking at what's happening today in Lebanon, Syria, in Iraq, in Iran. That is the main focus today. And yes, we are saying it to our friends, we respect your demand, your request, But first, we will do whatever is necessary to protect ourselves.
Yeah, but it is no secret that any government elected in Israel, shall it, any prime minister in power, will have to actually deal with the international community and things put on the table by the international community, case in point processes, if one can even still call it a process, that have been halted thus far. Is that something that the party of the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, party that you're part of, is willing to do?
Well, I think in the last 6 years, we have seen that the Prime Minister really dealt with the international community. Some would say he did it responsibly. Some would criticize him, but it's not new for us. Looking at our rivals from the left, I ask myself whether Tzipi Livni or Buzzi Herzog will be able to stand the pressure coming from abroad. I really doubt it.
Yeah, well, that's talking about the other, the other side. But when you say pressure, what do you mean by pressure? Forcing Israel to do things that it doesn't want to do?
We have seen the Palestinians taking unilateral actions, breaching the agreement that we signed many years ago. And I think we have to be strong. We have to be strong and to tell to the Palestinians, to the Europeans, and to the Americans, we are willing to negotiate, but we are not willing that the Palestinians will take unilateral actions and we will sit idly by and watch them. No, it will not be the case.
And unilateral action. Go ahead.
If they would continue with the unilateral actions, Israel will adapt also unilateral actions as well, as we did in the last few days, holding the funds from the PA.
We have Tal Shalev with us, I-24 News diplomatic correspondent, with a question to you.
Mr. Danon, good morning. Yesterday, the Israeli president himself criticized this move of freezing the Palestinian tax revenues transfer. So is he being weak too in your respect, in your party's respect? He's one of your own party members in the past. So is he being weak too in your categories?
I respect President Rivlin. Today he's not a political figure. He's the president of Israel. He can say whatever he wants, whenever he wants. But I think that the decision of the government was the right decision. And it is only a signal to the Palestinians. If you will continue in that direction, there will be a price for that. And I think eventually, if they will move forward in the idea of creating a Palestinian state without negotiating, the last thing we will have to do is to apply sovereignty on major part of Judea and Samaria. So they have to understand it's either negotiation between the partners or unilateral actions by both sides.
Now, Mr. Danon, we were speaking to political analysts last week. One of them specifically, actually, Gil Hoffman was saying that one of the only governments that can withstand, that can hold for 4 years would be a unity government, and that there's actually a chance that there will be a unity government after this elections. Is that something that the Likud is willing to consider? Is that something that's being talked about in back doors?
Well, I hope we will not get to that position. I hope we will get enough seats in the next Knesset, and we can form a strong coalition without the Labour or other parties. But if we will not be able to do it, then the Prime Minister will have to form a coalition. Personally, I prefer a government that is led by the national camp, and we saw what happened only in the last government when you had a conflict of interests, conflict of ideologies. Nobody could have moved forward. So I prefer a government which is based on the national camp.
Hey, Mr. Danon, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tal Shalev, I want to start with you. That was quite a fiery speech yesterday that Prime Minister Netanyahu gave. I think, something on the mind of many citizens this morning is, let's start with the bill that he proposed, and that would be the bill that he would pass after 100 days in office, shall he be elected, which talks about changing the election system.
Well, Netanyahu correctly identifies some sort of riddance feeling inside the Israeli public that is fed up with the current political instability, and he correctly identifies that this could be a good ticket, the governance ticket to bring up now and to set as the agenda for the elections. It's not clear that he gives much credit to the Israeli public's memory, because the Israeli public does remember that this last government, the last coalition Netanyahu had, did not fall apart because of the because of the system, or because of the way the system is built. It fell apart because Netanyahu decided to dissolve his own government. And also, this bill is perceived by many. We're seeing it today in the papers. We're seeing the reactions by the analysts. It is perceived as just another just Bibi bill. It's a bill that is designed to ensure that Netanyahu can consolidate his reign. It talks about the biggest party being automatically granted the right to build the government. And this is something that, in the Israeli, Netanyahu might be underestimating. It's true that the Israeli public is fed up with elections every 2 years, but they also might be fed up with Netanyahu, as we are seeing in the polls. And at the moment, I think it's a good ticket to run out, but the Israeli public's memory might boomerang in this respect.
Speaking of the polls, and let's take a look at the latest poll that came out this morning. If we're looking at the numbers, which aren't changing that much over the course of the last several weeks, we're looking at the Likud with 25, Labor with 24, Labor being, of course, I think the Zionist camp, as they call themselves, Jewish Home at 15. But it's neck to neck, and it looks as if, hold on, actually what we're looking at is, yes, it looks as if we're looking at a split in the middle of the Israeli society left to right, which is what Mr. Danon himself said. And then what would perpetuate, a vote again for Netanyahu? And how can the Labor, at this point, I think, what kind of platform do you think they can use in order to combat that type of a fiery speech that deals completely with security?
Well, first of all, Labor is, of course, trying to bring back the agenda, always put the social economic issues on the agenda. We can see Herzog and Livni, they are constantly visiting places where they can bring up socio-economic agenda and attack Netanyahu on this background and on his doings in this respect. But also, they are building on the international community. While Netanyahu says he stands up forcefully to the international community pressure, Herzog and Livni say, well, we wouldn't have to be in this situation of pressure if Netanyahu would initiate a move. But in fact, Netanyahu, these talking points that many in the Israeli media see very cynically and are very disrespectful of the Netanyahu talking points about the Islamist wave, and it does work to the Israeli psyche, and specifically to the right-wing voters, let's say the moderate right-wing voters that are the Likud base, some base of voters. I think what we see is like 23, 24 mandates. Right. I think these are solid mandates of the Likud. These are the solid ones. The question is, can he bring more? Can he take more from the center parties? And I think we're also seeing more 23 to 25 solid votes on the Labor part. So I think we are seeing a new picture emerging of two quite big parties, 24, 25, 23, 25, and a lot of small parties that are between 7 to 16 mandates each, and this will create, of course, a very big challenge to building the next coalition.
Of building a coalition, of calling coalition. Amir Oren is a defense analyst of Haaretz. I'm glad you're with us also on this part, because I was listening to Netanyahu's speech last night, and I was wondering what can be done on the part of Labor. What should Labor use as a platform to combat something that was so specifically directed at security? Was security, security, security. He even used a play of words on Shimon Peres's famous line that it's a new Middle East. He called it an ISIS Middle East. Does that sell with the Israeli public, especially after Protective Edge over the summer, which at the end of the day did not really yield any kind of outcome that is that preferable for Israel?
Why don't you ask yourself, Yael, what would you rather watch late at night? A horror movie on TV or a feel-good romantic comedy? Obviously, hope wins over fear anytime. However, as Tal rightly pointed out, Netanyahu is now trying to consolidate his base, the right wing. He is not trying to go for the left or even the center in the Israeli electorate because they would like to see some hope. They would like to see some end to this eternal cycle of violence which brings Israel nowhere. And the question, as Tzipi Livni put it in an earlier campaign, is whether time is working for Israel or against it. Because if time is not working for Israel, for various reasons, demographically, diplomatically, and many other respects, then it's time for Israel to fish or cut bait. It is not time for Israel to go into fortress Israel and try to ward off the attacks from ISIS or other groups, which, by the way, all the experts within the government agree that Israel's national security situation is much better now because of what happened in the Arab world. Regardless of what Israel has done, Israel's position is much better. It is better to face ISIS than the Syrian army with its armored divisions. So Netanyahu cannot really install fear in the hearts of Israelis, but he can call his own voters to come back to father and not vote for Naftali Bennett. This is his main rival. Now, regarding the governance issue, the bill that he is now trying to put forward, Netanyahu has always been weakened by the election following his election. When he was first elected in 1996 as a direct election, then he lost it in 1999. He was elected in 2009 with less number of seats than Tzipi Livni. Had his bill been in effect, Livni would have been elected, and then he lost 9 seats 2 years ago. So this is just a very transparent tactic, and when we get to the elections, it will no longer be there.
No, definitely. That's a question, but can you say that first? Yes.
No, just in the respect of Naftali Bennett, one of the problems Netanyahu has is that at the beginning of the campaign, he and Naftali Bennett agreed not to attack each other in the campaign, but Naftali Bennett is actually the biggest threat to Netanyahu. He's producing a very young party, with renewed forces, with a lot of new joiners.
It's the new right wing.
It's the new right wing, the young right wing, probably much more cooler. We have new faces there, and so Netanyahu has to find a way to combat that without attacking Bennett directly, and this is the way he was doing it, to demonstrate his own veteranship and his own experience, and how he is the most experienced person, and on that there is almost an agreement or a consensus in the Israeli society that he is maybe the most experienced statement
but it's ironic because when it was Peres versus Netanyahu, Peres emphasized his own experience and Netanyahu was young, and now Bennett is out-bibbing Bibi by being younger.
Yeah, it's going to get interesting. Thank you both. You're staying with me for the next story. On the related note, just 6 months ago, Israel waged a massive military operation to protect the lives of well-being of the residents of the south, defending them from rocket fire from Gaza and infiltration attempts by Hamas militants. On Sunday, the IDF began pulling troops out of communities near the Gaza Strip and leaving local residents to maintain their own security. Well, troops will remain in 3 villages closest to the restive border and will continue to patrol the area. Gone is the security of the knowledge that if any Hamas soldiers tunnel through their floor, there will be forces on hand to deal with them. Now, to discuss the move that drew harsh criticism from residents of the region, we're still joined in studio by Amir Oren, Haaretz senior defense correspondent, and Tasha Lev, I-24 News diplomatic correspondent. Now, before we get into this, let's watch the following report by I-24 News correspondent Shai Ben-Ari.
A decision that has more than a few people scratching their heads. Residents of Israeli communities adjacent to the Gaza Strip were notified of some surprising cutbacks. Special army squadrons assigned to provide 24-hour security in these communities would be dismantled.
I can't link this decision to anything but stupidity. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude. Stupidity and narrow economic interests. That's it.
On a practical level, it means there's no first response team during the day. Usually the soldiers are taking care of that part of the mission. And right now, when you take them off, then the people from the community who are usually doing it over time, like in volunteering way, they won't be able to do it because they're at work.
The houses of Kibbutz Ein HaShlosha are only 2 kilometers from the Gaza Strip. According to authorities, that is now too far to justify extra security. But the proximity is such that Hamas has been able to construct underground tunnels that bring the threat much too close to home. What we see here behind me is the entrance to one of the terror tunnels built by Hamas and discovered during the conflict over the summer. To give you a sense of the distance we're talking about here, those trees there in the background, that's Kibbutz Ein HaShlosha, where we were earlier, only about 800 meters from where we are now. What makes this decision even stranger is that it comes as Israel finds itself in an election season.
There's a lot of disregard on part of the government as well, since we live near the Gaza Strip, but there aren't many of us. Apparently, we don't represent a major electoral force. Even if we all vote for the same party, it's not even one parliament seat.
I also need to think about what the person I vote to will do to keep me safe. So yes, it's going to affect my decision.
There was hope that a meeting held by security authorities to reassess the situation Thursday afternoon would see a reversal, but the optimism was for naught. The decision to cut back on security was upheld, some would say, where it is needed most.
We're joined on the phone by Mr. Alon Schuster, who heads the Sha'al Negev Regional Council, located just on the outskirts of Gaza, and whose residents suffered weeks of intense rockets and mortar attacks during the war. Mr. Schuster, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you for being with us. What is the reaction of the people living in and around you to this poll?
Well, the situation is much more calm than was illustrated right now. I'm living for the last 58 years. I was born here, exactly miles from the border. In my kibbutz and other kibbutzim close to the border, there were no demonstrations. Of course, there are some kind of astonishing about what will happen while the soldiers from some kibbutzim had to go to their bases. But I want to emphasize, we're not alone. Nobody left us without guards, without security. There are thousands of soldiers and wonderful devices and the best generals around, knowing and having the responsibility to defend us, and they are doing it. They sacrifice their lives, and they are doing it 24 hours a day, any weather, and I feel completely safe. And I think that most of the inhabitants understand that their security is not rely on 6, 7, 8 soldiers in any kibbutz, but on the battalions and regiments that know exactly where to be in any time. Of course, I understand exactly what the mothers and the parents are feeling. I'm a father of 4 kids, 2 of them still at school. I raised them with my wife during those days, right. Those years. And so I understand, but I don't think we have to feel so frightened. There are by the way, challenges that we are trying to achieve. We think that the government and the security agencies should allocate the budget in order to build the new fence, the new devices along the border, and they should arrive to a better opportunity to allocate the offensive tunnel and some other much more important things in order to secure
the residents.
Security, yes.
Mr. Schuster, thank you for joining us. I'd like to also go quickly to Elinor Bariach from Kfar Aza on the Gaza border, who I don't think is that happy with the pullout of the soldiers from that border. Elinor, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you.
Do you feel less safe this morning?
Oh, definitely. And I was very actually happy to hear what Alon just said, but we're not feeling secure. 8, 10 soldiers that protected us and lived in our kibbutz gave us much more than just confidence. Watching the soldiers, seeing them for us as the adults, for the kids, is much more than just safety and just more than knowing that someone protects us. If anyone will come and would like to destroy it or kill us, he'll be able to do so. But once the kids and us seeing that someone is watching us directly, if there's anything that's going on, someone can jump immediately and help us, that's much more than just 10 soldiers protecting us. And I'm thinking one of the most things that I'm and my friends are very angry at is that nobody talked to us. This is the first time I'm hearing someone who's speaking with us, the civilians. We're living there. We're the ones that are protecting us. They're protecting the country, same as Alon Schuster, of course, who's part of our regional community. But then we're there. Nobody from the government, nobody from the
Well,
state
the army,
of Israel.
the army actually said that it was coordinated with the local residents, with the local council of the residents down by the southern border. But Elinor, I want you to stay with us because you're making very, very strong points. And I want to ask Emil Oren, if I'm listening to Elinor Barayer, and who actually was in the studio right after the war, and what was achieved by that operation over the summer? I mean, isn't that something that if somebody like Elinor still feels unsafe and feels that she needs the soldiers even just to see them on the border, what was achieved by that operation?
Well, the balance is really mixed. It wasn't a great victory by any length, and nothing was achieved long term. And Israel may find itself in another such cycle in a few months' time. And what Elinor is saying has to do with the sense of security rather than with substantial security.
Which is as important at times.
Yes, it is important. And the points raised both by Alon Schuster and Elinor are valid, and they bring out the problem here, which is rational versus emotional. In police work, you used to have the patrolman on the beat. On each corner, you saw a policeman. It gave you a sense of security. But police work is much more efficient when they sit in a squad car and are being able to respond to any alert anywhere. Now, it is true that commanders in the field, Elinor heard them at the time, promised the residents, we are not going anywhere. We are not going to leave you. And they gave a false sense of security by virtue of keeping squads or platoons there, which is not the most effective way to train an army to go to war the next time. What should have happened, if it was needed, was to give the communities border police squads rather than soldiers. These infantry soldiers would be made better use of in fighting the Hamas inside Gaza rather than staying there. Also, it is much more dangerous to wait there and absorb mortar attacks or go in the roads between communities.
Right.
Up to now, there was no tunnel being dug inside a community, but rather in a midpoint between communities.
And Elinor, sadly, we have so little time, but I think Tal Shalev and I are wondering, who are you going to vote for?
Is that politically correct? I will vote for the one that will try to change something, since nothing has been changed for the last 10 years or so. But if I may say so, I must say that I think one of the most powerful things that we had in protecting the hedge was us, the residents who protected the state of Israel. And we're feeling as right now, I'm not sure if the next cycle we will do so.
Okay. Elinor, thank you so much for joining us. Sadly, all the time we have Emil Oren, Tal Shalev. Thank you for being with me in studio. When we get back, something different. Pope Francis's new cardinal appointments reflect the shifting face of Catholicism. Stay with us. First, the news. Good morning, and thank you for staying with us. I-24 News, January 6th, 2015, with the one and only Tony Grand.
A windy, gray one.
A windy one.
Yeah.
With all the news, you missed while scanning the headlines, and I think the news is this.
That will be the news tomorrow.
That will be the news.
Today we have something from, very dramatic stuff.
Yeah, incredibly, the metaphor of the Middle East.
Yes, of the whole world. Yes, including Russia. We'll get to them too.
Yes.
Well, let's start with this neck of the woods, Times of Israel. The United States is weighing cutting aid to Palestinians over the International Criminal Court accession move. There's a headline right there, and again, this is something that could be a game changer.
No, that's that would be a big game changer. I think I saw also a statement from the State Department. Correct me if I'm wrong, saying that they were going to leave the approval of the Palestinian aid in hands of Congress, and we know what that means.
And speaking of Congress, The Hill says that, as something that we already know, but the Republicans have taken the reins in the Senate this week. We got a 54-46 majority in the Senate. This is the first time since 2006. Congress convenes this week under full GOP control. There they are, smiling and happy. But only 2 are wearing pink. What's up with that?
Yes, I know.
Republicans,
It's like the new Republican. It's no longer red, it's fuchsia pink.
What's that thing that's like, don't be scary is their new mantra, I think?
And step on your dog.
Gently.
Yes. Gently though. Yes.
All due respect to Sarah Palin. But there's some controversy because John Boehner, his days might be numbered as the Speaker of the House. Or not, but he's making headlines because some people within the GOP are looking to replace him in that role.
In that position?
Yeah, so we'll see. It's going to be interesting times on Capitol Hill.
Sad because I just finally learned how to say Boehner.
Actually, I know how to say Boehner, but I'm not going to say it on the air because it will court controversy. But Republicans like to put spins on things.
On that one, yeah.
Anyway, Haaretz, Amman, capital of Jordan, is angered by the Palestinians' UN bid. Who would have thought? But they are. They're not happy about it, apparently.
No, it's an interesting thing because it was Jordan that actually put forth the resolution at the UN Security Council on behalf of the Palestinians. Clearly, that move, the fallback after that resolution was not approved, is not something that Jordan was behind. But moved and many, I think, also within the Palestinian Authority itself are questioning.
So lots of questions surrounding that. And also, I'm not sure if we got to this yet, but Financial Times, this headline from actually yesterday, but quite interesting about Hassan Rouhani, president of Iran, saying that he's threatening to hold a referendum. Now, this is interesting. This is remarks made actually over the weekend. He said that he's threatening to hold an unprecedented referendum, which is within his constitutional powers, as he's warning hardline opponents of a nuclear deal with the West that Iran really must end its international isolation. So
he's actually threatening democracy.
He's threatening democracy. I mean, it's this is kind of a headline that lands with kind of a thud. I mean, this is really kind of big stuff.
Yeah, I'm just going to put it to the vote of the people.
Which could be great, could be not great, but could certainly be a step in a new direction for Iran.
Interesting, and very interesting. No.
And so that's something we're definitely going to follow. Economic news, it's certainly not my specialty, but let's just look at the Wall Street Journal saying the euro, a good old euro, has tumbled to a 9-year low. And this is very interesting stuff. The euro sank as low as 1.18 against the dollar in Asian trading hours Monday. Now, the weaker currency could be good for European exports, but there's talk about the with the snap elections coming up in Greece, the possibility of what's being called in Bloomberg, the report, a Grexit, a Greek exit from the Eurozone, which again could trigger a domino effect and lead to a lot of economic instability. It's a complicated situation, but you're seeing a lot of these headlines reflected.
The headlines, and sadly also we're seeing, it goes back to, the whole point of this European Union notion. It's not really been that successful.
It's kept Europe together in one way. I mean, the people France and Germany are best buddies, and some could say the crux of the matter, but do they need all the rest of the apparatus to keep them from dueling it out?
From moving forward to imperial. Okay.
You can't speak about Greece, at least I can't, without mentioning Turkey.
Of course.
Because they are neighbors.
Very good one.
Yeah. Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu has said he's going to be attending the Davos Economic Forum later in January. Now, this is an interesting development because, of course, President Erdogan of Turkey, when he was Prime Minister, actually infamously stormed out of a panel debate at the Davos Forum when Shimon Peres was sharing, then President of Israel, sharing the stage over the the so-called 1-minute debate rule, which may or may not have been respected. So it was a very stormy session back in 2009.
So he's threatening to do that again.
Well, he's saying he's going to go, and of course he won't be as the president. So it's Erdogan who's really calling the shots, one could say, in Turkey these days. But is Turkey trying to kind of soften its image by going to Switzerland and
joining on that international forum? Wondering out loud, though, or is he are they planning to come in to storm out yet again?
Who knows? Who knows?
Yes.
But we'll be following that in the Turkish press as well as we get to that date of Davos. Jesus. Of course, back in the news.
Jesus
Holy
back
Land.
in the news. We have a big Jesus segment coming up. Yes.
Yeah. Well, before we get to that part of Jesus, in Jerusalem, where Jesus was.
Yes. Yeah.
Archaeologists probably have found the site of Jesus' pre-crucifixion trial. And this was an excavation. It's been going on for years, at the Tower of David Museum there, which is, of course, in the old part of Jerusalem, old city. And part of King Herod the Great's palace, of course, is where apparently Jesus had a trial before he was led to what became known as Golgotha, the crucifixion site.
Okay.
So for the million Christian pilgrims that come to Israel every year,
and that was found where exactly in Jerusalem? Near the
Tower of David museum complex.
Another area of dispute. Yeah, Jaffa Gate.
The Jaffa Gate. Okay,
no,
there you go. Yeah, there's a picture of it there.
Nice. So that's more to fight over. Okay.
Well, if you're in, potentially, but for those that are just captivated by the religious heritage of the region, it adds another piece to the jigsaw puzzle.
It does if they remain just captivated.
Just captivated. Take a picture and move on.
That would work. Okay. Oh, no.
Anyway.
Fabulous stuff, Tony, and in Jesus news and Jesus and Erdogan news. Thank you for being with us. Do stay for the next segment.
Thank you.
On to our next topic. On Sunday, Pope Francis named 20 new cardinals, including many from Latin America, Asia, and Africa. These appointments to the church elites reflect how much these areas have become key for the Catholic Church as its demographics shift away from Europe. 15 of the new cardinals are also under the age of 80, meaning they are eligible to join the conclave, which elects the next pontiff. The new princes, so to speak, of the church will be installed at a ceremony known as the Consistori, okay, I've done that right, at the Vatican on February 14th. That would be Valentine's Day. Yes. Joining me in studio is Melanie Lindman, Middle East and Africa correspondent for the Global Sisters Report. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And first, let's hear what the Pope had to say with these appointments.
Il prossimo 14 febbraio
on February 14th, I have the joy of holding a consistori, during which I will appoint 15 new cardinals, who, coming from 14 countries from every continent, show the inseparable bond between the Church of Rome and the particular churches present in the world.
Also joined via Skype from Italy by Elizabeth Simari, Deputy Editor at L'Osservatore Romano. Elizabeth, good morning to you. Reactions to these, I don't want to call them controversial, but definitely new and shifting appointments of the Pope in Italy and within the Vatican.
Yes, I think the most important point of the election of the new cardinals is the universal nature of their nature, and they come from 18 different countries. They're pastors of all different kinds of dioceses around the world. They're three newly represented countries which have never had a cardinal before, which those countries will be very excited to see a cardinal and have their areas represented. And the Pope is just really calling for support in his mission from cardinals all around the world.
But not only that, I think it's right to make the case, and do stay with us, Melanie, I'm going to go to you, that he's picked some cardinals from developing countries, and he's just showing a move away from Europe, isn't he?
Yes, I think what's interesting about the College of Cardinals is that in the 1950s it was very European-centric, and even more that it was very Italian-based. In the 1960s there was a liberalization of the church, and there was a really move to try and include cardinals from other developing countries. Now, in the Catholic Church, they divide the world into basically two spheres. There's the global north and the global south. The global north is Europe and North America, traditionally the centers of Catholicism. But in the past 2 decades, the center of the Catholic Church, in terms of the sheer numbers of membership, is really switching to the south. That's Asia, Latin America, and Africa. What's really interesting about these latest figures of the cardinal electorates is that 9 of them are from developing countries. As Elizabeth mentioned, they're from 18 countries around the world. There's also 3 countries that have never had a cardinal before, including Myanmar, the archipelago of Tonga, and Cape Verde off the coast of Africa.
And this is gesturing, though, Elizabeth, still on the phone with us. You know, the Pope himself gave a speech, I think it was several weeks ago, a month ago, to the European Union, where he really spared nothing. You know, it was like this long list of insults. After which he got a standing ovation, oddly enough. But, you know, is this gesturing, is this being accepted within the Vatican hierarchy as a move to try and change the old guard, so to speak, trying to later on maybe pave the way to some changes within the church itself?
I think so. I think lots of people are open to new changes in the Vatican and really trying to make the church in Rome a representation of the church around the world. So, as a move to represent that, it's a step forward for everyone.
Exactly. In that respect, and Melanie, when it comes to you and looking at that move, and not just the history of the church, but looking at that move, this is a pope that really is not stopping at showing the world and his Vatican that he's about to make changes. Is the church, in your mind, in your opinion, is it ready for changes that seemingly, Pope Francis is trying, to move ahead?
Well, I think that this is part of Pope Francis's campaign to show his commitment to the peripheries of the church, and we're talking both about the geographic peripheries and also kind of about the margins of the church and the society. And we saw this in the synod in October, right, when he talked about issues with people who have been divorced, homosexuals. I think that he's facing a lot of opposition from within the church, but there's something to be said for really shaking things up as much as he can and seeing where the chips fall. If you remember back in October, they released midway through the synod, they released a kind of halfway document that was very supportive of homosexuals, and there was a huge outroar in the church. So
exactly.
The eventual document that came out took a few steps backwards. It was still overall it was a step forward. It wasn't as far as many gay activists would have liked, but it was in that direction. So there's something to be said. Maybe his strategy is really shaking things up as much as he can and then taking a few steps back to appease the opposition, but still moving forward slowly.
Well, as everything in religion, we know that even time takes time, and maybe maybe it's too soon to call it, but also, Elizabeth, I want to start with you. When it comes to this specific pick, and as Melanie very, very rightfully mentioned, there are things that I think will be one step forward and three steps back. But he's also trying to almost but influence who will be picking the next pope.
Absolutely. He himself on Sunday asked for support from these cardinals in his mission, in his pastoral charity, and in his apostolic work. And he's really trying to find support, but also new opinions and people from around the world who have new perspectives and new ideas about ways in which to govern the church. And these men will pick the next pope. So it's important that they share his views, but also have different points of view.
Is there opposition? Actually, let's start with you. Is there opposition to this pope from within the Vatican on all these moves? Are those voices being heard?
I think there was definitely some surprise in Italy. There were two traditional centers of Turin and Venice that don't have cardinals right now, and they were really expecting to get cardinals. Instead, the Pope appointed a cardinal from Agrigento, which includes the island off the coast of Italy where many of the African migrants come. Lampedusa. So that was a very specific choice that he made, and I think that certainly there's anger. If you're from Venice, you think I deserve a cardinal. I'm from Venice, Italy, and he just kind of skipped over that and gave a cardinal to an area in Italy that doesn't always have a cardinal. But he was making a very specific statement with that choice.
Elizabeth, same to you. When it comes to those specific choices, which are very clear and obvious, are there voices heard against these new moves by the Pope?
I'm specifically not hearing any, but I think in any case when anyone makes a large decision, there are always people who are going to disagree. But the point is that the church is behind him and agrees with what he's doing, and this is a great move in universalizing the church. So most people are behind him.
No, and I think a lot of the people in the world are behind him. Isn't this he's almost as popular, if not more popular, than John Paul II, isn't he?
He's certainly, most people that I speak to around the world, when they talk about Pope Francis, the first two words out of their mouth are rock star.
Rockstar Pope.
Rockstar Pope. No, listen, I mean, he's generating headlines, but, in an interesting and good way. Thank you both for joining me. When we get back, something really different. The latest on the royal sex scandal rocking the UK. Yes, do stay with us. It's going to be interesting. First, though, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Welcome back. It is actually Tuesday, January 6th, even though my prompter says Monday, January 5th. But it's wrong, right?
It is.
Yes, okay. 2015 is the year. This is still the morning edition, and I am Stelia Elavi. Thank you for staying with us. We are on to, yes, royal news. Let's go to the latest royal family scandal that's been rattling the British public. Prince Andrew has been accused of having had sexual relations with an underage woman who claims she was forced by the prince's former friend and sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein, to sleep with several high-profile men. Among these listed are also renowned lawyer Alan Dershowitz. The palace has, of course, denied all allegations, but this might be more than just your run-of-the-mill scandal. To discuss this ongoing drama, we are joined via Skype from the UK by I24 News London correspondent Jonathan Sachadati. Jonathan, top of the morning to you.
Good morning, Yael.
Yes, do stay with us. Let's take a look. Before we delve into the subject, let's watch the following report by Mandy Kogosowski.
It seems that it was only a matter of time until the British royal family would find itself tangled, once again, in the midst of yet another embarrassing sex scandal. This time, the main protagonist is Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, the Queen's second-born son. The prince is accused of having sexual relations on 3 separate occasions between 1999 and 2002 with a then underage woman, identified in the UK by the name Virginia Roberts. These allegations surfaced as part of the plaintiff's legal actions against financier Jeffrey Epstein, a former friend of the prince and a convicted sex offender, whom she claims forced her to have intercourse with several powerful men and used her as a sex slave. Prince Andrew has refuted all allegations. Buckingham Palace issued a statement denying that, quote, the Duke of York had any form of sexual contact or relationship with Virginia Roberts.
He'll be kicking anything that comes in sight because he knows he's innocent. And because he knows he's innocent, he's not going to be pushed around.
Royal family scandals are often considered simply juicy gossip, but a story about forced underage sexual relations might be something quite different. It is not clear at this point whether the prince is immune to potential charges in a court of law, but he may very well be tried and sentenced in the court of public opinion.
Jonathan Sachadati, I24 News correspondent in the UK. Jonathan, I was about to start and say, what do you have to say for yourself? But now let's look at this head on. Who is this woman? Why is this coming out now? This is dominating many headlines, not just in the UK.
What's happened here is in court papers, she has named Prince Andrew and Alan Dershowitz as people who are involved in some sort of global sex scandal, where Jeffrey Epstein, who is a convicted sex offender, is said to have trafficked her and offered her to powerful men around the world for sexual favors. Of course, both Dershowitz and the prince have denied this categorically. And in fact, there are other accusations, I believe, involved in her papers involving other big names like Bill Clinton as well. So it's quite possible that there is no truth in these sorts of accusations. And Alan Dershowitz himself has filed papers with the courts
he has
in Florida.
Filed papers in the court in Florida. He's even called this an anti-Semitic move. And before we continue, let's actually have a listen to what Alan Dershowitz had to say about these allegations.
The allegations against me are totally made up. They're absolutely false. They're made up out of whole cloth. I don't know this woman. I never had sex with her or any other below-age woman or any woman having any association with Jeffrey Epstein. I wasn't in the places at the times that she alleges.
Okay, that's, very strong, words denying this, obviously, by Alan Dershowitz, which one would expect. But that said, Jonathan, do continue. What is known about this woman? If in case some of these allegations or there's some truth to the matter, what do we even know about her?
Well, she's named in the court papers as Jane Doe 3, but of course it's been said in the papers here that she's Virginia Roberts, and interviews with her have even been conducted and published now from over the past couple of years. Prince Andrew denies any form of sexual contact with Virginia Roberts. He flew back from his skiing holiday yesterday to manage the crisis, and Buckingham Palace issued a statement on Friday that said any suggestions of impropriety with underage minors by the Duke was categorically untrue. Now, some reports over the weekend have suggested that Prince Andrew may have been secretly filmed with one of the girls he's alleged to have been involved with, because there's some evidence suggesting that Jeffrey Epstein might have had hidden cameras in his properties in Palm Beach, Florida. So on the day of his arrest, apparently, according to these reports in some papers, the police were in possession of photographs showing some of these alleged occurrences. But there is no suggestion, again, as yet, that Prince Andrew is shown in any of those photographs. Now, Roberts' father claims that she met the Queen sometime at Buckingham Palace. But of course, the Queen and Buckingham Palace have issued a statement saying that they have no record of such a meeting, and they categorically denied that as well. Her claim is that she was flown all over the world by Jeffrey Epstein, and she would give him massages on his private jet and be used as some sort of sex slave between 1999 and 2002. So obviously what this does is it rips apart the normally very controlled presentation of the royal family, suggesting that there may be this sort of activity going on, absolutely denied by the palace, at a time when Great Britain is rather rocked by all sorts of underage sex scandals, historical underage sex scandals, and it chimes with that people are wondering who was and who was not involved in this sort of activity over past decades.
No, I know. I mean, the thing is, you just said the line that I want to follow up with the question of the historical sex scandals, which, I mean, that opens the door to so many questions. But I do want to ask you about the names mentioned in this scandal, not just Alan Dershowitz, but former Prime Minister and Defense Minister Israeli Ehud Barak is actually named floated in this whole, international global sex scandal. Is that something that's being touched on by the British papers as well? Clearly, of course, here there's also a denial by the Barak, people.
So far, the British press is obviously rather fixated on the idea of Prince Andrew, the son of the current Queen, being involved in this sort of activity. Exactly. Dershowitz has made sure that he's been very publicly shown and interviewed and been categorically denying that he had any involvement. And his suggestion was in all of those interviews that all these other people, especially Prince Andrew, ought to take action themselves in the courts and ought to deny this, because Dershowitz says that he wasn't even in the places where he was alleged to have been when these things happened, and that he can prove that. Now, Roberts has said that he ought to prove that, and that he needs to prove that he wasn't involved, and stands by her allegations about all of these people, and that people who are victims of these sorts of sexual abuse crimes ought not to be silenced, and she refuses to be silenced again, even by these powerful men who she is alleging have somehow abused her. Of course, the names are so big, the story is so fantastical, that it's either the scandal of the century or more, or she's something of a fantasist, and some of these allegations, if not all of them, will be absolutely shown to be untrue, and these giant names weren't involved in some sort of international, interstate sexual favors and sexual slavery scandal. But of course, we've yet to see, and quite rightly, Alan Dershowitz is taking it to the courts to have his name removed from the papers so that there can be some sort of official record. These allegations can't just be made without any kind of evidence and trial to show that these men were actually guilty of any of these alleged crimes.
No, definitely. And Tony...
If I might just chime in there for a second, Jonathan, but Prince Andrew hasn't actually denied having known Jane Doe 3, this Virginia Roberts, correct?
That's correct, and there are photos of him with different women at different times. None of them suggest that there was any kind of sexual relationship. He was indeed a friend of Jeffrey Epstein, which was an embarrassment for the palace when it was found that he was guilty of sex crimes. And so that has been plaguing him and Buckingham Palace since. But of course, there's some level of difference between having friendship and dealings with somebody who turns out to be a convicted sex abuser and having been involved in that kind of sexual abuse, the second of which is a very serious allegation, which of course the palace is keen to say is absolutely untrue.
Untrue. And finally, not just the headlines, obviously, in the tabloids in the UK, but, in the court of public opinion, how are people in the UK taking to this?
We have a bit of a love-hate relationship here with the royal family. Sometimes there are people complaining, what are they for, what do they do, how much of our money do they spend? And Prince Andrew is no exception to that rule. He's meant to have involvement as some sort of roving international ambassador for trade, but of course that has meant that sometimes his dealings with different people involved in slightly more controversial areas of trade and in some more despotic countries has been seen as a problem. On the other hand, those those sorts of trade often bring in big money for the UK. So it's not necessarily Prince Andrew's fault that he's involved in those things or that the state is involved in those sorts of commercial activities. This is just another example of the kind of controversy that the family has to put up with. And when they do have to deal with it, it of course reawakens all sorts of other opinions about whether or not we should have a royal family at all, and whether or not these people are answerable like the rest of society and like regular politicians who would be subject to more close scrutiny and transparency that we of course expect in a democratic country.
Jonathan Sachs-Shadati, thank you for shedding such an intelligent light over a story that is very, in many ways, whether true or wrong, whether right or wrong, quite sordid. But Jonathan, thank you very much for being with us this morning.
Thanks a lot,
Yes, I don't know how you can top that, Tony.
Oh, yeah, I can't. But, I just wanted to say, what is a prince doing with a 17-year-old, even if it's not impropriety? Isn't it kind of indecorous?
Well, still, you
in
have...
Florida?
And all roads lead back to Florida.
Palm Beach? Was Donald Trump there? Was it at Mar-a-Lago? I mean...
Who wasn't there?
I mean...
Yeah, is the question. Yeah, will be. We are heading into the viral spiral that is the web review.
Oy.
Although, oi is the line. Yes, dear. What?
Well, listen, I want to talk about something a little bit less controversial, but interesting in a way. Talking about Alexei Navalny, the Kremlin critic. Who is
if you're connected with him, you're going to find yourself in jail. Yeah,
well, it's quite possible, or under house arrest, as he has been. But he tweeted a picture of his clipped ankle bracelet, which is quite a ballsy move, you might say, because he is a very vocal critic of Putin, as we all know, and there is for the world to see what it looks like when you free yourselves of the shackles of Putin physically. Now, what this means for him, I don't know, but he clearly doesn't give a hoot.
No, I mean, listen, this is somebody who is either one day looking to run for some sort of a position or against Putin, which, everybody's been speculating about, but that, wow.
Yeah, so there it is in Russian, but the picture speaks louder than words. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, boy. Well, travel. 2015, and people are thinking about what are the destinations to go to, and sometimes the sort of excitement is right at the airport, especially if you're Halle Berry's husband, Olivier Martinez.
Olivier Martinez.
Yeah, now, he is French, and she is not, and they arrived at LAX, and apparently there were paparazzi, and he threw a baby stroller at one of the photographers, and it didn't go down
Was
well.
the baby in it? No.
No, it was, baby car seat. Not
baby car seat.
Yeah, so it's caught on tape.
Those things can kill.
Yeah, they're heavy. Yeah.
They're very heavy. They're very, very heavy. He threw the baby car seat. Listen, I at times want to throw that thing myself.
But did you see Olivia Martinez in with Diane Lane?
Yes, that movie, she's cheating on her husband thing.
Yeah. Ooh, that was interesting.
Interesting.
He hasn't done much since.
Not that he had to. That I think is that was a movie that
He's
really
talented,
showcased. It showcased him in all his talents.
It did.
Yes.
Yes. And in many places.
Yes.
But LAX tends to bring out the worst in people.
It does.
Kanye West is getting into flaps there on the sidewalk, and I don't know. It's something about that airport.
Something in that terminal.
You know where that place is a beautiful airport, St. Bart's. And that's where the stars have been arriving en masse, following Leo DiCaprio, who has been partying like a rock star in a $28,000 a night luxury villa. There he is. I think his new look is quite interesting.
I know. I hope that's for a part. I mean,
Actually, he was filming a new Alejandro Iñárritu film up in Calgary, The Revenant, so he was sort of heating himself up after freezing as took us off in Canada. So there he is, was surrounded by models with a beard and with a ponytail.
$28,000 a night villa and no cameras, that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a bit young for a midlife crisis now.
I know, it's like an ongoing post-Wolf of Wall Street kind of thing. Rihanna was spotted in St. Bart's. Also, who was spotted there? Salma Hayek, Francois Pinault. Us. Yeah. Well, we have got, the Jaffa Port with the biblical storm.
Coming our way. Yes. Yay.
Yeah, so good times in St. Bart's. And also, speaking of travel, The Guardian came out with a list of places to go in 2015.
Which is?
One of them is actually Palm Springs, California, where I recently was.
Where are you from?
Site of the film festival. Not from there, from Santa Barbara.
Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
Okay, still.
But beautiful Palm Springs is attracting a lot of celebrities and movie types. Film festival.
Plug it.
Yeah. So listen, interesting.
There we have
a lot of Bauhaus architecture, Bauhaus style, kind of modernist. So kind
actually,
of
the
Tel Aviv parallels.
In California, something that even I know about.
Really amazing stuff.
And quickly,
the Azores.
The who?
The Azores are also a popular destination.
The Azores, okay.
They're the islands off the coast of Africa, Portuguese.
Places we never go.
Yeah, beautiful place to try to get to in 2015 for vacation and fun in the sun.
And fun in the sun.
Yeah.
And clearly not fun in the sun behind us, but you are staying with us because coming up next, just how accurate was Back to the Future 2? We want to know with its prediction of 2015. So stay with us. We'll tell you how accurate it was. First, though, let's go to the morning headlines. Good morning, and thank you for staying with us. I-24 News Morning Edition, the place you should be on this January 6, 2015, a very ominous one if you're in the Middle East. Yes, folks. Doesn't that look biblical? It does.
It does.
In a way,
really
it does. There's something.
The ark is coming.
It is. It's coming.
We'll see the giraffes.
The warnings of the impending storm lead me to you, Benjamin.
Indeed.
Yes. I'm joined by the Economy Magazine anchor Benjamin Chong Alvarez. I'm so happy to see you. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Too long.
Too long. Don't leave me like that.
I won't.
Don't.
I won't leave you this way.
Please. I'm not going to sing. What do you have for us today?
So we have a report regarding Lithuania, which became the 19th member of the Eurozone. Which is interesting in of itself, considering that the Eurozone is not doing very well.
To put it mildly.
So we ask, why is this happening? We have a report on this.
Let's take a look.
Let's see.
There are now some 337 million Europeans using the same currency. On January 1st, Lithuania became the 19th country to join the Eurozone, a move that has seen widespread approval, with 3/4 of the population viewing it positively.
I think positive aspects of it would be that for Lithuanian businessmen, way easier to export. No converting currencies, less taxes. Also, banks would get smaller percents from them. And in general, Lithuania will look more attractive to foreign investors, as they will see the real situation here, without converting currencies to litas. And in my opinion, it would be a great guarantee to Lithuania's economy that it is strong and for foreign investments.
For Lithuania, though, this is not their first attempt, having tried to enter the Eurozone in 2006. But Brussels refused, apparently due to high inflation. Instead of devaluing currency, the government opted for austerity, and some touted this as successful, showing growth replace recession. Unemployment numbers shrank, public debt hit around 40% of GDP, and inflation was at almost zero. But this was just the surface. Labor costs declined as worker protections were stripped. Immigration was rising, and EU stats suggest that 30% of the population is still at risk of entering poverty or social exclusion. Indeed, inequality is growing in Lithuania, and with this changeover, some fear a new price spike.
Well, we Lithuanians are a bit afraid that we will wake up with high prices.
The currency changeover is seen as a means for Lithuania to strengthen its ties with the West and to build a dam between itself and the hurting Russian economy.
No, that's just interesting in itself, as you said, Benjamin, at the beginning of this. But I think it's almost like a metaphor, or I don't want to say a cautionary tale to where the EU is heading, is it?
Well, I mean, it's interesting just looking at the EU and of itself, what's happening there. The EU is currently and has been fighting deflation, with Germany essentially being the strongest economy and the one player, so to speak, in the Eurozone that has been fighting against the concept of deflation, of stimulus, which really there's a very big push for. And I'd say probably the majority of economists today expect there to be more stimulus happening in the EU.
In the EU. Why is Germany pushing against it?
Well, of course, one of the biggest issues with the Eurozone is that you have economies that are there's a giant gap between the economies of the South, the pigs, so to speak, Portugal, Italy, Greece, Spain, the debtor countries.
And
then you have more
bleeding,
indeed. And then you have, of course, Germany, which has been sort of holding strong.
Yeah, one can theorize only.
Yeah, so it's between wanting to spend more money on infrastructure, which we saw with the Juncker plan just recently, which it's not entirely clear what's going to happen with that necessarily, but it seems to be pointing in the right direction in terms of giving more support.
Right.
As opposed to the other hand, which we have more austerity, which is what Europe has been seeing more of. And of course, now with Greece going to elections and actually also, we're talking about the pigs.
That's the question. Austerity was used in Greece as well, right? I mean, that's exactly something that happened there. And it looks, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not the educated person on anything that has to do with the economy. But Greece might be actually seeing itself out of the EU pretty soon.
Might be.
It's
not entirely clear what's going to be happening right now because they are going to the elections, and there might, Syriza, which is the opposition party, the left-wing party, so to speak, that is against austerity specifically and wants to just get rid of this bailout plan. It's not been good, so to speak, for the people. It's been harder on the common man. If they do that, I mean, that's really going to change things tremendously.
How so? Just give me a theory of what happens. Then
First of all, if they go
out
directly against the EU, I mean, that in of itself, it might lead to some sort of a domino effect, so to speak, where other countries see, oh, wait a minute, they can do it, we can do it as well. And on that note, actually, the other pigs are also going to the polls. I mean, Portugal, Italy, Spain, all the other countries. It's anyone's guess what's going to happen next. But I think the most important thing here is actually the January 22nd meeting where the executive board of the Eurozone essentially gets together and decides most likely to push forward for stimulus.
Stimulus. Wow. So it's kind of make or break time for the EU in many
It very much is make or break. This is a very, very important year for the EU. Of course, the fact that Germany also saw prices go down is actually even more of a push for, well, hey, we probably do need this.
Yeah, if they want to maintain themselves also as the strongest one, but who knows? Fascinating stuff. You're actually helping me understand this, and thank God we live in the Middle East.
We didn't answer the question, though, in terms of Lithuania very quickly.
Yes.
Why would Lithuania want to join this sinking ship?
Thank you.
Of course, you have Russia to the other end, which is not doing very well either.
Yes.
But most important, I think, if we look at the past year, what we saw happening in terms of Russia's incursion, in Crimea, in Ukraine, and whatnot, the idea of being linked to the EU is very, very,
don't
very.
Be there.
It's certainly very appealing to
it's interesting
to any country that's close to Russia.
No, it's interesting to see actually how Russia may benefit from the fall. Well, that's all theories.
Yes.
But very, very, very true. Thank you, Benjamin. You're locked in the studio.
Yes.
With us, right?
Indeed.
Because Ronnie Stav of culture news that are the most important thing. Let's face it, culture and pop. Try and beat that. Yeah. Take it on.
I think I can today.
Yeah, I think you can. Yeah,
So
I think you can too. Yeah, I think you've got the thing that we're all of our generation.
Totally. So in the 80s, we had Back to the Future. Michael J. Fox is traveling to the future.
Benjamin and I, by being 26 each. Exactly.
Yes.
We were there.
Yeah,
yes.
You were there. So maybe you remember what happened. I think we should have a look and see how 2015 looked like in the 80s.
It's Zemeckis.
Zemeckis
did it. Let's take a look. Yeah.
The future is now.
2015? You mean we're in the future?
Doc Brown's DeLorean time machine, more of a time capsule now. An 80s vision of 2015. Hoverboards and all. In some things, the movie was close to the mark. Marty Jr.'s viewing habits, for one.
Channel 1 channels 109, 87, and Weather Channel.
Sound familiar? And those kids at the dinner table? The technology and the attitude already there.
Dad, it's for you.
Biometric taxis?
That'll be $174.50.
Here. Sounds far-fetched, but we do have Uber and Apple Pay. Then there's that gag where the newspaper headlines change before your eyes. Great Scott!
History has now been altered, and this is the proof.
Back to the Future also changed the future, at least in some small ways. Nike says it actually hopes to release self-lacing sneakers in 2015. And those hoverboards? This is the Hendo hoverboard, for real. The device, not perfect yet, but then again, neither was Marty McFly's. David Wright, ABC News, New York.
No, as very, very rightfully put by Benjamin, all these things, because we really, I've been waiting for Selfama. What was it? Selfama, the shoelaceless shoes. Okay, I've really been waiting for that. It'll solve world hunger.
I know.
Entirely.
I know.
But maybe world peace would have been, one of the notions.
No, those things are so much more important to spend money on, because, it will evolve us as humans.
But it's interesting to see that, first of all, it's mind-boggling to me how much time has passed. This movie, the movie came out when?
89.
89.
Yeah.
And many of the things, are still there, but we're not hovering, which is...
We're not hovering, but as we could have seen, it's coming.
Yes, it is
so
coming.
Everything is coming, but I think that the most interesting thing was the part at the dinner table when they were like putting the so-called glasses that are a phone. And okay, we have the Google glasses, but I'm actually talking about the disconnect in between humans that I think that they portrayed that really exists today. You have this machine that is your
between you and everything.
Yeah, between you and everything. That's your first connection to everything, regardless of who you are, what's going on through your day. And I think that's something that, I don't know if it's such an optimistic way to look at it.
I love it. The thing is,
mean,
you're saying it with a smile, but it is the future, and let's blame it all on Zuckerberg. But
yes, please do. Zuckerberg, what were you thinking?
Yeah, I think he opened a book club I read yesterday with 30 million people. Nauseating. Yes. That said, yes. Moving on. What else?
PJ Harvey is releasing a much anticipated album. It's a follow-up for a 2011 Mercury Prize winning "Let England Shake." Now this one will shutter the idea of live performance and recording an LP. She will actually record her LP in a glass studio in Somerset House in London, and it's going to be sort of an exhibition where people can come and see her making the album.
So, but it's not like a live acoustic performance.
No. She's making the album. They were saying it's a 45. All the museum goers will have 45 minutes to be there. Some of them will just see people tuning their instruments. Yeah, and
performance art.
Yeah. So we don't know what the museum goers will see. Now, like in the beginning, I was like, this is horrible. This is absolutely horrible.
I'm with you in that because I'm thinking, you're sitting there recording your
I was
LP
like,
and
it's like a zoo. Exactly. What is this thing? Why everything has to be live? Why everything is reality show? Why we can't have the spectacle be a spectacle?
Yes.
But at the same time, when I was reading what she was saying, well, at the end of the day, we see the fans today. They have no appreciation to music, to the spectacle, to the art. Like, we don't understand today the process. So through this idea of kind of reality
by force via our iPhones, or
absolutely. In a minute, like everything is in your phone, and then you're bored with the song, and then you're going somewhere else, and you don't have any appreciation to an artist's
what
art.
It is that they do.
Exactly. So maybe even though we're using the filters that we hate, at least I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
At least maybe, people will understand the work.
The work itself.
At least, and like taking it from like Marina Abramovich that like years ago were like, I am a spectacle being myself. And, it did create some sort of a discation. So maybe if nothing else, it will be a discussion.
I wouldn't want to be her, but yes.
There's so many reasons why I don't want to be her, but, she does her thing. Totally did her thing.
Yeah.
Seinfeld.
Yes.
Seinfeld.
Sorry.
So
also of our generation.
Yes.
I don't know if were you a Seinfeld guy?
I was not a Seinfeld guy.
Yeah, you didn't strike me as one. Yeah.
But you were smiling. I was like, yeah, he's so happy about it. No, not so much.
Huge Seinfeld fan here. Yeah, stay away.
Yes. So we know that today schools, colleges are using TV shows in order to portray different things in different courses.
You have to, because students won't listen to anything unless it
exactly. Going back to the PJ Harvey, it's all the same thing. We need to get them. Yes, exactly. So Dr. Anthony Tobia, an associate psychology professor at Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School, have a class called Seinfeld. Yes, that's the name of the course. Your eyes went like pachu.
No, I was like, I don't know if I want Seinfeld taught in med school.
And it will allow students in the hospital's psychiatric rotation to discuss psychopathology of the episodes, in the characters in the episodes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What, the pathology behind regifting?
Yeah, the pathology behind, Jerry is, they're saying Jerry is obsessive compulsive, Kramer is schizo.
This is why you never watched it. No, but okay, so the pathology behind being an obsessive compulsive Jew.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
in many ways,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Kramer
Okay.
is a schizo. Elaine has an inability to forge meaningful relationships. And
She's
George
like every woman, okay? Please, yes.
I agree.
Hello, yes.
I agree, but okay.
And it's not our fault.
And
I'm
it's
just
not
saying.
our fault.
Yeah, it's not our fault.
definitely
Yeah.
not our fault.
And
George Costanza is just egocentric.
Just egocentric?
He's just egocentric. That's all. That's all we
Yeah.
have about George, apparently.
And God, I forget the
I
name.
feel like George is looking at it, he's like, dude!
Exactly.
Again, I'm nothing.
That's all I got.
That's all you have to say about me.
Oh my God, no, I'm all for it. I'm just well, at least it's a psychiatry school, right?
Yes,
This
yes,
has nothing to do with operations or anything.
No,
like that.
no. I feel like they should bring Grey's Anatomy
into that, and exactly, and fold that in.
then
My
everything
God,
will-
people cannot.
Saint Elsewhere.
Yeah, Saint Elsewhere. My God, we were born on the same year. Don't even ask what that was. Saint Elsewhere. Yes, for that audience out there of our age group. Folks, that was it for us. Do not forget to watch The Economy magazine every day on.
At 9:24 News. I'm kidding. At 7:10 Israeli time.
At 7:10
Jerusalem
Israeli time. Plug it. Ronnie, the amazing Ronnie, start with us. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, all those social places, social network places, exactly. And of course, tomorrow morning, tune in for another edition of the Morning Edition to start your day, as you should be doing every single day. Amen.